How to Be a Successful Black Man, a book written by Dr. Daniel LaRoche. It's an easy read and a great book for families, kids, grandkids, nieces, and nephews to help give pearls for success. Available for purchase online on Amazon and more. I got mine. Go get yours. Link is in the description.
Welcome to another episode of the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. I'm your brother O God from Hip Hop News Uncensored, and sitting across from me is my co-host.
What up, y'all? It's your man Sam, and CEO of Vile Hip Hop News, and you're in the building for a very special edition of the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. Today in the building, we got legendary actor, writer, producer, our man, the legendary Mr. Isaiah Washington on the podcast. How you doing today, family?
Man, I'm just happy to see you young brothers doing your thing, man. I'm so excited.
we are just as excited. Definitely appreciate
especially coming out of New Jersey.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You are, yes, sir. We definitely appreciate it. Shout out to Hiawatha Henry, the absolute beautiful plug out in Houston, Texas, who was doing her thing, who introduced us and got to set this up this afternoon. So thank you very much. We definitely appreciate you. And throughout this crazy world and everything we got going on, brother, we like to start off with just asking our people, how you feeling?
Man, I'm in my bunker, man. I try to stay off of social media as much as possible these days. I haven't watched regular news in 10 years, man. Me now, as you can see, I talked to my 23-year-old son, who was my age when I was really becoming, interested in the world and how I fit in it. And unfortunately, we have found that the world is pretty much where it was when I was 23 years old. And I will soon be 59, hopefully on August 3rd. I mean, all the protests, all the marching for Mumia Abu Jamal, and finding out that things just weren't what they seemed. People were pretending to be supporters. And I was always been a ride or die, living in Fort Greene, Brooklyn,
Right.
I was always at the forefront of trying to be an innovator and changer. I come out of hip hop. I remember, getting a down bag of wing from Biggie,
Wow.
in Fort Greene, when he would just sell it. You know what I mean? That's how far I go back. I remember Chris Rock living in the same neighborhood up the street, the barbershop, Diamond Barbershop, where we all got our haircuts and we dreamed and we talked stuff. You know what I mean? I would go to Spike Lee's Brownstone, which was a block from where I was, and go read the script for Crooklyn and Girl Six and Clockers in his basement. And he would say, "Man, you read too slow. I got to get to the Knicks game. Lock the door before you leave." That's just that was a time that, unbeknownst to me, was a really, for I guess everybody in the youth in their 20s and 30s figured those are the golden era. But even though it was very tough, and I found myself be concerned about my own well-being in Brooklyn, especially when the Biden Clinton's 94 crime bill came out. I just felt like with all the, Illinois bumpers and the Michael Stewarts and all the crazy stuff that was going on in Bensonhurst, and the reason we had to have Do the Right Thing coming up and all the corruption, I fled in 96. I couldn't wait to get to LA. I met my wife in 95. We got married in 96. I never looked back because I just felt like, with me and my mouth, I'm going to end up in federal prison or dead. I just felt like any second I was going to have some crack planted on me, and I was going to be a part of the, correction corporations of America, man. I just knew it.
Yeah, now you're out of Houston, right? You spent a large portion of your young life in Houston, correct?
Yeah, I at the time when I left in 1981, single parent mom. I didn't get the football scholarships that I thought I was going to get. I didn't become the Deion Sanders. I like Deion Sanders running backwards, for the NFL my whole career as a cornerback or free safety or strong safety. Didn't work out that way, so I ended up begrudgingly and out of spite, I joined the military, only to find out when I got back to my high school in Houston, Missouri City, the black coach showed me some letters of interest from other colleges like Southern and Grambling, Texas Tech, some real, what we call the Pac-8.
Right.
And that was the first scandal I was caught up in, that the coaches tried to send me to a lesser program and get a cutback. I talk about it in my book. I talk about it in my podcast. It's just the truth. And I thank Coach Narcisse for telling me the truth, even though I had already committed 4 years in the military, but it was the hard truth of how people do business and how capitalism really works when it comes to black men and our bodies.
Now, I don't know if it's fair for me to say, but from the outside looking in, it seems as though you were born to do what you're doing right now in acting and directing and writing and expressing yourself the way you express yourself through your legendary roles. When did you realize that film was for you and something that you wanted to get into long term?
That's a great question. That came about inadvertently around 1986 when I talk about how I thought I had my midlife crisis at the age of 23. I had already been married. I'd already done 4 years in the military and was doing quite well in the private sector, and looked around at my big screen television and my walking around with a pipe and an ascot on in my apartment in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and just like, is this it?
Yeah.
Have I hit the pinnacle? You know?
Right.
And I sabotaged it. I got bored and I sabotaged it. I sabotaged my marriage. I sabotaged my job, and I ended up homeless, sleeping in my Chevy Spectrum, and working for, I don't know if Kelly Temps still exists, but there was an organization called Kelly Temps where you can go get some part-time jobs, you know. And I ended up digging ditches with a lot of former crackheads, former lawyers and doctors all over the Maryland and Virginia area. And I learned a lot from them, how they had all fallen. They told me their stories. And they were telling me the horrors of PCP at the time. And when I joined the military, it was during the first recession, the Reagan administration. So it was tough. People talk about the recession, the Great Recession during the Obama years. No. I remember in my neighborhood, people losing their jobs with Chevron, all those oil companies, and literally a ghost town in my neighborhood. You could walk up and down the street, anybody's house, would just walk through the front door. Lucky enough, they had Winnebagos and little campers that they could live in. I mean, like the homelessness that I see today, I saw in 1981. And it just seems like every 20 years it repeats, man. The same old playbook.
Wow.
I mean, I live in a very nice home right here in Venice. Right. And I walk outside my house sidewalk. I got to clean up human feces from the homeless people. I mean, right outside my door.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't run from it. My kids, we don't run from it. We help where we can. We've always been very generous, quietly. Helped a lot of young men via social media. I'm proud of one particular one. I'm not going to mention his name. I won't embarrass him, but he's gone from being what we call 5150, suicidal, cutting himself, to owning his own security company, and invited me because he got a major contract to secure a lot of executives for the next Super Bowl in Arizona. I feel good about stuff like that. But that's not the first time, because someone helped me. Like when I lost it at 23, I ended up meeting a young lady at IBM, and had a crush on her. And in order to date her, she said I had to become born again. So I said, whatever, whatever, you know, whatever. You know, she's about an 8 out of a 10. So whatever I got to do. Went to a church, got baptized, fell in love with Jesus so hard I didn't even want her, man. I wanted Jesus. Ended up doing a couple of you could research it. A call in the Gaithersburg church, somewhere out the Beltway, outside of Gaithersburg, Silver Spring, Maryland. I did my first gospel play called Pork and Beans, where I played a gay character that was infected with HIV at the time, because HIV was the biggest scare at the time, like COVID is now, right? And Cynthia, the lady that I had a crush on with IBM, saw me in that play and just was convinced that I was gay. She wanted no part of me. He said, "You ain't acted, man. You did that role too well." But I'm a heavy researcher and a very instinctive observer of human nature and people. Always have been since I was a child. I used to entertain my family by mimicking Michael Jackson and James Brown, you know, just to make my family laugh. So I think it started there and in the church. I've always been creative, but, you know, they kept shoving a football in my hand. You know, it's like to be creative or to be a rapper, to do anything, to be a poet. You don't know you're a poet. You don't know you're different because of your environment. That's why I really love hip hop artists, because they're poets. They just don't know how to exercise that creativity because it's not masculine. And then they go all the way out, you know, with the mythos, you know, the pathos in terms of their rap, and do very, very well. But they're artists. They're poets at the end of the day. You know what I mean? All of them are not gangsters. I know that for a fact. I rode on the back of a garbage truck with DMX, laughing and talking about his White Album that he never released, where he had this incredible gospel voice, man. He sounded like Gerald Levert. And I begged him. I went toe to toe with him, over a bottle of $3,000 bottle of Louis, arguing about him. Man, really, he used to sing to my cat when we were doing exit wounds. He would roll up on me and always throw his Rough Rider jeans at me, wanted me to sag. I said, man, I ain't sagging right now, nigga. I'm wearing Prada. He's like, y'all, come on. You can't roll with me like this. I like, I'll throw on some Timberland boots, but they gotta be made. They gotta be boots made by Prada. I'm not rocking. I'm out of Brooklyn. I'm not doing that no more, man. But that was the time, and I miss him. I really do. I'm just shocked that he's gone. He lived a hard life. He was what you saw, that was who he was, but he was also, believe it or not, a very kind, generous, deeply spiritual man. And I don't know, I'm getting myself in trouble with that White Album. I don't know if they're gonna release it. I hope they do, but it is the truth. I remember he telling me, he said, Isaiah, if I release the people not gonna follow me. But if you notice in his recent album, he's praying at the end like a preacher. He said he always, like in Belly, he always thought his life was going to end up in the pulpit. But something in him, anyway, I digress. But anyway, he never, I really believe Tupac and Biggie could have become our latter-day Malcolm X's.
Wow.
I really do. I really, really do, because if you look at the history of Malcolm X, he was no saint.
Right.
And if you studied it, if you believe in that good Bible, most of the men left to right of Jesus Christ, they were no saints.
Right.
Okay. But that's my thing on that. I don't know why they're gone. I have my theories, my conspiracy theories, but they were very Biggie and DMX. Pac, very powerful voices, man. When Tupac died, they put his obituary in The Economist magazine. The Economist magazine comes out of London. Only high dignitaries, presidents, get memorialized in Economist magazine. That just tells you how powerful Tupac's voice was. And now we're discovering just how powerful DMX's voice was.
Yeah.
Right? And they're gone. I'm always asking myself, why? But anyway.
When DMX passed away, were you surprised to hear what they say is the cause of death when you heard it, when we all heard it?
Next question. In my mind, everybody has their opinion, right?
Right.
I believe the hospital is the last place I'm going to go. If you hear anything about me, it won't be in the hospital, bro. I'm not going to commit suicide. And I told them, I'm not going to the hospital. I just got out of COVID. And everybody, I'm still wheezing, but I'm still self-caring and handling myself. I'm not going to the hospital, bro.
Gotcha.
Ain't no way. Ain't no way. Not doing it. I'm going to have to be really, really hurt before you roll me through those trauma doors. I worked in the medical. I've seen in Inglewood what goes on in the trauma wards. Okay. And, I know there are a lot of good doctors and nurses out there, but if you really want to know what's really going on in society, walk through a trauma center, walk through some emergency room. You really want to know what's going on in the world. It is war out there, but I don't have to tell you guys that.
Right.
And I'm saying to myself, how can this be? We're in the 21st century. And I went through this when I was 23. Like, wait a minute. How can it still be this bad? How can people still be this illiterate? How can people still be hustling and having to hustle, have no other options? Still. PCP is still a thing here in California. People still getting wet.
Yeah.
They're still making money.
Yeah.
We got some of our own gang members out here sex trafficking our own people. You can't be a foster care person that just be put out on the street at 18. You're done. West of Adams Street, you're going to disappear. Why? And so we say, houseway. Now, I know capitalism, everybody got to make money. But what is going on? What so many of our people are forced on making these choices. It's not like you can't make another choice, like what you guys are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why is it so attractive? Well, look at social media. Look at the movies that people are making, which is why my movie, I deprive the audience of blatant and gratuitous violence. So people look at my movie and it's all implied. It's like, oh my God, it's so violent. That scene, this, and I'm not showing you anything.
Right.
I'm not showing you anything. What that tells me, that social media and the media has gotten our society, collectively speaking, so desensitized from actual violence that we see posted. This guy recently getting stabbed in the neck. Everybody will go to their phone before they try to help somebody today.
That's a fact.
Unfortunately,
man.
How did we get there? Well, I know how we got there. Everyone, I mean, everybody has a cell phone. You don't need a license for that. But it's a smartphone. It's a GPS system. It's a tracking system. Even when it's turned off, they can track you. And now people posting their anger, their rage, their personal information. The algorithm knows, well, okay, this is what we want to feed the beast. This is what they want to see. So then when a movie comes out that doesn't have the visual violence in it, and just your imagination is making it seem like it's worse than what you're actually seeing, that tells me that you rather see real violence and you have been taught that your imagination is the thing to fear. We're in a society where we, collectively speaking, been taught that our imagination is more diabolical and more supposed to be more feared than what we're actually seeing in real time.
You know, something I've always appreciated about you is you, throughout the 3 decades that you've been in the game, we've seen you do a multitude of actors. You've played in Crooklyn, you've played in Strictly Business, you've played in Romeo Must Die, Girl 6, NYPD Blue, Grey's Anatomy. I'm going to say this: you've played so many different roles. You would get on a bus, you were a gay man. You never came on stage and gave us the thought that you were cooning and buffooning or doing anything extra. You always had a level of integrity as a Black man in Hollywood, something that we appreciate. We often ask some of the legendary people we get to speak to. Talk about your journey through Hollywood as a Black man. Was that something that you were mindful of? Is that something that you felt pressured to do? How did you stand as Isaiah Washington walking into some of these rooms and these roles, hearing some of the things that you heard throughout your time, if you don't mind me asking?
Sam de los Santos. That is by far, I got chill bumps, the best question that has ever been asked of me or to me in 26 years.
Hip Hop Uncensored Podcast.
And my answer is this. I love being a Black melanated man. I don't know how to be weak. My grandmother, my mothers didn't raise me to be weak or afraid of any man or anything or any system. They spoiled me and told me I was built for greatness, even though I didn't know what that greatness was. Through the grace of God, according to them in the church. But I saw a lot of corruption in the church, so they will always tell me to spread the love and speak your truth. If you stand on your truth, you will have longevity. But if you stand on a lie, you will die. So even when I agreed to play these stereotypical characters, I always risked being fired by changing it up once I got the job. I would rewrite most of my scenes. If you see me in Romeo Must Die, I was giving homage to Shaft in the end, even though I was playing a bad guy. I had on a leather suit that my wife designed, and Joel Silver wanted to fire. He put in my next contract for Exit Wounds that I would not be dressed better than any of his lead actors in a movie ever again. He wanted me to wear a cane, be playing football with some gold fronts, gold chains, Kango hat turned backwards, so Stacey had the shoes on with a silk shirt. I'm like, dude, I ain't Slick Rick, bro. I don't do Slick Rick. All right. You know, he wanted me to have a patch on my eye. When I went into the wardrobe, the Slick Rick was the prototype for my character, Mac.
Wow.
Slick Rick. Nothing against Slick Rick.
Right.
But I'm like, bro, this is year 1999, almost 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Slick Rick was at the height of his career in the 80s, yo.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kept my mouth shut, got the job, and then put that thug on him. Like, what you gonna do about it?
Right.
You gonna fire me? Because I got people that ain't been born yet that one day is gonna ask me a question. How did you stand? Well, I do it. There's a penalty for that. You get besmirched. It's difficult, angry, hard to work with, and that, man, you know, other than if you take off Grey's Anatomy and recently whatever about two things off the internet right now, you don't know anything about me. You don't know that I've been married to the same woman from Houston, Texas for 26 years, brown skin, melanated sister, great body to this day at 53, banging, 3 beautiful kids that speak multiple languages, no DUIs, no domestic violence. Man, I don't even have a speeding ticket in the last 15 years. I ain't got a speeding ticket.
Wow.
But let the world tell you I'm public enemy number 1. Well, what Malcolm X tell you about that?
Mm-hmm.
What Malcolm X warned us about that?
Yeah.
Why is it that the so-called great ones that you, wait a minute, how can he be a monster when I don't? Who telling me this? Who's telling me this? I train with special forces. I train with law enforcement. Why? Because I want to see who they really are. I want to get in the belly of the beast. I want to know what they know. I want to know their SOP. I want to know their TTP. I want to know their AAR. I want to understand their language. That's why I'm playing a U.S. Marshal, one of the baddest men that wouldn't be a thick mustache cowboy from John Wayne to Sam Elliott in 1883 if it wasn't for Bass Reeves. That man made over 3,000 federal arrests with some of the baddest human beings on the planet in an area that was worse than Afghanistan and Iraq and Chicago combined.
Wow.
In the heat, where 250 less melanated marshals died because the Native Americans that were angry and organized from the Trail of Tears weren't having it in the Indian Territory. They were kicking everybody from the U.S. government's behind. So they had to go to what? A black man that was illiterate, spoke all the languages because he got into a fight with his brother or his master over a card game. He disrespected him, which I talk about that in the movie. He just like you guys get into a beef. Well, this guy was treated like Michael Jordan because he was such a crack shot since he was 8 years old. His mother used to stop him from singing songs about murder and bank robberies because he thought he wanted to be a criminal. But he was incredible at tracking. And when he ran away from the Confederacy and fled to the Indian Territories before it became Oklahoma, they realized the only person they could hire to clean that area up in 32 years was Bass Reeves. And you don't know this man. From True Grit to Lone Ranger, from Sherlock Holmes, if you do the timeline, when Sherlock Holmes first hit the press as a short story, it was at the height of 1867, if I'm not mistaken. You do the research. I want people to see my movie so they can start asking questions.
Right.
Like, I was upset. I like to do roles that scare me or piss me off. Like, why don't I know about E.D. Nixon? Why don't I know more about Mumia Abu-Jamal? If you go back and look at True Crime again, I snuck his book in the opening scene. It's on my cell bed.
Wow.
When you look at True Crime and Clint Eastwood asked me, how does it feel to be on death row? I pretty much plagiarized exactly what Mumia Abu-Jamal said. And Clint Eastwood was with it. Wow. Everybody around him was like, well, what's with this book? Death on, what is this? Live on death row. What is this? What's this bit? Who's this got these locks? Clint Eastwood was like, don't worry about it. It's just Isaiah thing. He was with it. So I've always been subversive in all of my work. from always outnumbered. I've always said this is who we could be if you would just get out of our way. Just get out of our way. That's all I ask. I don't, like James Brown said, I don't need you to give me anything. I can get it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Just get out of my way. What is it about me that you feel like I'm so all these adjectives when I don't bother you? I don't wake up in the morning. My people, I'm a chief, Gundebe Manga, the second in all of Sierra Leone, representing over 6,000 villagers. I made history, becoming the first human being and the first African-American to receive a dual citizenship, something that Pan-Africanists from W.E.B. Du Bois, and Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X talked about, died for. Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah. I have a passport from Sierra Leone, dual citizenship. Do you know that melanated people, former slaves of America, are the only people that don't have a mainland to go to? If 100 years from now, a group of people said, take your black ass out of the United States and go back to black, there is no country called black. You got Chinese Americans, you got Haitians Americans, you got Jamaican Americans, you got Puerto Rican Americans, you got Dominican Americans that have a mainland they can go to if they had to. I used to send barrels back to my girlfriend's family in Jamaica all the time. I got Haitian friends that send barrels back home all the time. You got Chinese, Mexican, Mexicans, everybody to send money back to their mainland. What mainland does the average African American have other than a liquor store, a church, a frat,
a
freaknik? Where are we gonna go? If they say stop, it's over. Where are we gonna go? Some people say I ain't going nowhere. I'm still right here. But yet you don't fight for the Second Amendment. And you don't snitch on the people that's killing everybody in Chicago with these illegal guns that you know is coming from somewhere. What is Greco's? Street sweepers. I mean, high power, 50 calibers, grenades, smoke. Where that's coming from? In Chicago, in Chi-Town.
Yeah.
Where that's coming from, man? Now, if you're in Texas, okay, you get access to all that and it's legal. But in Chicago? Oh, don't say that word cartel. Why are so many people worried about what I'm doing or not doing?
Right.
I don't think it's that. They're worried about what I'm going to say. And I try not to say much. All I do is ask questions. You asked me, how did I stand in Hollywood? I stood, brother. I stood for integrity. I stood for what was right. When somebody wanted me to get in the jacuzzi and I already had the hot job with them and we were a huge hit and they wanted me to get in the jacuzzi with them, and I said, I got a 2 a.m. curfew. I can't do that. But, you're my boss. I want you to holler at my wife. Gave the person my phone. The boss gave the phone back to me, and I said, what did my wife say? It says, look, she said you've been here since 7 o'clock. If you're not home by 2 a.m. and you get in this jacuzzi, you can stay here forever. I took my job, G500, man, and I drove from the Hollywood Hills back to my home in West Hollywood, man. I had about 3 felonies. I did about 115 all the way home so I could slip in that bed before 1:59, man.
Right.
I'm not going to break up my family for no foolishness, man. I will die for my family. And that's why I have a family. Because the nuclear family, I've been taught, is extremely important. If you don't have a real family, you have nothing.
Facts.
Yeah.
And that's why the gangs are thriving. That's why the prisons are thriving, because young brothers want to feel something. They want to be attached to family.
Yeah.
So if that's why I did Blue Caprice. So if the leadership is toxic, if the root is toxic, then what do you think the fruit gonna be? And then what you gonna tell them? What you gonna tell them? Don't do that. Don't do that when we watching criminals in our government get away with sex trafficking, crack use. How you gonna tell a young buck, hey, don't do that when he's starving and he's looking around going, well, everybody I'm supposed to trust is supposed to be on the right side of the law is doing everything they're telling me not to do. Mr. Washington, I had a young man that went to prison that I worked with. He didn't get on the bus. He played the young guy that was in trouble and get on the bus. Played Thomas Jefferson's son. I used to hold on to him, and he ended up doing time. Ended up shooting his uncle. Couldn't hold on to him because he asked me when he was in his 20s. He says, "What do I have to live for?"
Wow.
I said, "What?"
Wow.
He said, "There's death all around me, gunshots all around me. What do I have to live for, Mr. Washington?" I didn't have the answer, man. You have to come up with that answer. If you don't have inside you a light, if you're not strong, man, only strong will survive, right? I'm looking more and more like Dick Gregory every day.
Right.
Powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's love, man. It's the love of my melanated mother and grandmother is what you see. You know, I love my people, even if they've been told not to love me, and it's all good because I still gonna show the love. I'm still gonna represent you powerfully. I'm still gonna show you the way as best I can, as independently, and that's what Bass Reads is about. Is know that hey, he was a superhero for our time, and he was on the right side of the law. He was working at the federal level. Well, they got him in the end. Toward the end, he couldn't arrest no more white people. Racism was institutionalized. Racism came in when they created, Oklahoma in 1907. But before that time, black people, yellow people, you want to deal with the racial construct, yellow people, everybody worked together, made money together. They were, the government at that time had a very interesting way of making racism profitable. And I kind of think they still do.
Yep, sir.
And it's just not true. The level of division is just not, I don't see it. I don't walk in the airport and white people, black people spitting on my face, threatening to lynch me. Now, when it was happening, we got more done when we could see that strange fruit up the street, off that oak tree. Mm. But now we got Shade Room. Nothing against Shade Room is making us money. We got World Star. Everybody's trying to post something on World Star. That's what we are.
Man.
As of taking that ingenuity, I used to do speaking engagements years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think I was at Harvard or North Chapel Hill. I used to, about my book, A Man from Another Land. And I used to be hired until they really started talking about, seeing what I was really talking about, promoting DNA and the importance of DNA, and you shouldn't be scared of African ancestry. They didn't want me telling you to find out, the average American, to know where you come from. Because once you know where you come from, you know where you're going. That's not a doctor or a dentist you could go to without medical history. Mm-hmm. But if you take a people's history away and make it uncool or make it unworthy, or the hell with Africa and them Africans, you don't have your history.
Right.
You don't get to diagnose properly. You're going to be a sick people. Right?
Yes, sir.
And you're going to get diagnosed the way they want to diagnose you, or you don't get diagnosed at all. They just let you die. So how can you not have your history? Right. That name, De Los Santos, comes from somewhere.
Yes, sir.
I bet you know where it comes from. Right?
Not as well as I should.
You need to get on that.
Not as well as I should.
You need to get on that and get your citizenship from wherever that name came from.
Mm-hmm.
That's yours. You've earned it, and you're protecting it, and you're branding it to this day.
Yes, sir.
So that's all I've been saying is dual citizenship. I'm going to Angola. I'm 100% Mbundu on my father's side. Everybody know in the African or the Gabulan history, legacy, genealogy is that the father takes precedent. I'm sorry, patriarchal system, but the father comes first. I went to Sierra Leone because of my Mende side, because I respect Western culture. The woman goes first. So I went and got my citizenship in Sierra Leone first, but I'm on my way to, God and ancestors about the lie and Ogun allow me. I'll get to Angola, which they've been trying to beg me to come to Angola. And Kagame have been trying to get me to move to Rwanda for the last 8 years now. He's like, just leave America, man. We could build your house. You want a mansion? We'll build it.
Wow.
We'll build it. Give us $250,000 and you could have all the land you want for the next 99 years.
Wow.
Just get out of America. But I won't do it. I don't run.
I hear you, definitely.
My grandmother don't run. I don't run.
Yes.
I don't run.
Yes,
sorry about that. Yeah. So I heard you talking one time and you were talking somebody, we often throw the term out, Black Hollywood. Yeah. You said that Black Hollywood does not exist. Could you kind of expound more on that?
Yeah, I put it in the proper context is that, yes, we have some very prominent and very strong. I understand what Black means. Yes, right. I am Black. symbolically, but I'm also melanated, and I'm also Mindy, and I'm also Timney. I'm also know who I are and what peoples I come from, but I do not shun blackness. I get it. But when there's a man by Stepin Fetchit, okay, created a term. He was the most powerful, the most richest star doing what he did. And he himself, when I read his book, the autobiography of Stepin Fetchit, he said he mentioned Black Hollywood as a pejorative. It was a joke because white people didn't respect him. Even though he owned an airplane, he threw the lavish parties along with Hattie McDaniel. He was like LeBron James and Michael Jordan put together in Hollywood. He was driving on the studios his Model T Ford. I mean, he was rich. But the image that he's portrayed, although very clever, he died regretting. In fact, he had a TV show that would have been the first Cosby Show, playing a doctor. And the son, Lamont, whatever, the son that ended up playing Sanford and Son's son on Red Fox's show, Sanford and Son, Stepin Fetchit, Mr. Perry, had hired him to be his son growing up in a wealthy home. That was back in, you can research it, you get his book, 70s or the 80s, and Hollywood said, absolutely not. And by that time, the NAACP and all the other, liberal-minded progressive people were calling him a coon, sellout, Stepin Fetchit. But what he was doing was just flipping it. He always was clever, and if you watch him, he came off like he was dumb, but he was always getting what he needed. He was hustling, which is what we still do today. But because he was so rich, his own people turned on him because of the envy and the jealousy, the power, and they had to strip him of it, and they did. He died broke.
Yeah.
They did it to Canada Lee as well. Look him up. Canada Lee called him a communist, and the end of his strong forward thinking. It's like, if you notice, everybody that's want to be strong black males in this town ended up being called something else.
To kind of expound on that, one thing we like to do here on our show is go against the grain and go against what we're supposed to be deemed as. Now, I'll give you an example. We'll talk about politics.
You have a great voice. You know that?
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
You're leaving money on the table with that voice, man.
Like, shit, look, open some doors, we be with it, brother. But anyway, we often talk about politics. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and obviously, something that plagues our culture is if you're not Democrat, you're not black. And we've even heard candidates have the nerve to come out of their mouths and say, if you don't vote Democrat, you're not black. And it cracks us up, because when you look at the parties, and not that we associate with any of the parties, we associate with what's right for our people. But when you look at the parties and what we seem to lean on, and then you look at the end results, it doesn't ultimately benefit us. But we are under such a mind control that this is the way to go. And if you don't go this way, you aren't black, or you aren't deemed what's supposed to be black, like voting for Trump and things like that. And we've heard you be outspoken about it, and we've also seen you take a lot of criticism for that. But that's something that we applaud you on, because you're a free thinker. And something that plagues us is the ability to freely think. Talk about how that has plagued our community, if you feel it has plagued our community throughout time, and what can we do for the people that are listening right now that may be feeling like that on that side, that if you don't vote Democrat, you're coon, or whatever the case may be. How can we reverse that mind control? How can we reverse that way of thinking? Because it's wrong on all levels, in my opinion.
Self-preservation is real. I have to be very careful what I say, because I got to sell this movie.
Yes, sir.
I will say this. It's a carryover from slavery. I think the trauma, the PTSD that we now call it, is so endemic. It's almost in our DNA. The level of trauma of those 400 years that people don't want us to keep talking about, right? Want us to forget. If you go back to Steve McQueen's movie with the one factor, Chiwetel Ejiofor, in 12 Years a Slave, he's being punished, and he's halfway lynched, just enough to send a message and have his tippy toes in the mud, right? But he's still lynched. In that scene, you will find several women and other people that wanted to reach out and help him. Some would put water on his ashen lips, cracked lips from being held in the sun for days like that. Wanted to give him some water. And then in the scene, you would see the other slaves like, get away from him. Don't go near him. Don't go near him. You help him. You're gonna get us all killed.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine 400 years on this land, according to history, right? 400 years, not just of, some melanated people own slaves too. The first one was, I think, was named Washington, if I'm not mistaken, the first black man in 1619 out of Virginia. It was a business. Human trafficking is still a business. You understand?
Yes, sir.
It's like crack cocaine. Slavery is still happening right now as we speak. Okay? It's just under a different name. Right? But when you traumatize people, well, they have that imagery of knowing, if I help him, then they're going to hurt me. I don't have that in my DNA, unfortunately. I didn't get that trauma. That level of self-preservation where I'm just going to look the other way. All of my activism has been in my work. I don't need to march. You just cited all the work, everything I said. Who has the goal wins. In Strictly Business, my first movie. Mm-hmm. I have been talking to you, brothers and sisters, since Strictly Business. I've been telling you what the score is. I've been telling you what to get ready for. I've been showing you what to expect. But in that, you can still hold on to your dignity. That's non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. Non-negotiable. And money comes and goes. I can tell you that right now. It ain't about the money. If it was about the money, why so many people are unhappy? If it's about the money, why we got to look at Amber Heard and Johnny Depp for 6 weeks? If money made you happy.
Yeah.
Right? So self-preservation is real. Now, there's another thing called choice. Just because people are doing bad things doesn't mean they're mentally ill. There's a lot of people out there doing bad things because they choose to do it. Don't matter what ethnicity, gender, race, color. It's just people out there that's just going to do some evil stuff, guys. And I think a lot of people are, genuinely good people. We just don't want to accept that. But if we look at mankind and the history of humankind, like my movie, I got a lot of trees. A tree, you don't see a bonsai tree or different species of tree, or you don't see a rose uprooting itself and attacking the daffodils. Talk about, we roses up in here. You just don't see that shit. Right. And I know people are like, oh, come on, man, he's oversimplifying it. But what plants do you see, even the poisonous ones, attacking other plants? Other than Lord of the Rings, what trees do you see walking around killing people? They know their purpose. Until we as a peoples remember our history and know our purpose from the past to the present to the future. I talked about this in my documentary, Bound, African versus African Americans. It's a choice. Out of convenience, out of fear, out of laziness, it's a choice. And it's a penalty. You got to be strong enough to take it. And if you believe in anything that's filled with light, you will survive. You one day you will live to be, talking to, Sam and his cousin. You know, in a positive. It's possible to have love in your heart, to be educated. It's okay. It's cool. To travel. If I could give a gift to everyone in the world, it would be the gift of travel, man. I would.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be money. I would just put you on the plane until you just stop. You couldn't take it no more.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, so you can see how the rest of the world lives and lives, right? So, yes, is America one of the greatest countries I've ever lived in? 100%. It is. It is. It is. I've lived all around the world. I love being in the United States of America. I love the freedoms that we take for granted because I've been in other countries. I lived in Korea. I lived in Japan. I haven't been to China yet. I've been invited. Got a huge fan base in China. But I'll get there at some point, right? But it's a choice. And conversations like this, hopefully, and the next generation and your audience will hear my words and know that I'm being authentic. I'm not making this up. This is my life. I know the choices I've made is going to give me pushback. It's going to be a penalty for it. I know that. But it's the truth. It's the truth.
Yes, sir.
You know?
If you can, take us back to your introduction to Spike Lee and how this, you know, for people who don't know, how was it working with Spike, man, on all those movies and all these years?
Yes, sir.
Man, I stalked Spike. I ain't gonna lie. I got some stalking in me, man, when I want something. And when my gay musical director told me after Pork and Beans that I was so convincing to play that character, he said, "Boy, you got a talent, but you need some training." And he gave me a book called by Oscar Brockett, I believe, called Stage Design or whatever. But anyway, they talk about Ossie Davis, Howard Players. So I was selling pots and pans and hustling and ringing the bell from these guys out of Boston, you know, selling these little folders. It was at the height of PCP in DC, right? So everybody was hustling. Crack cocaine was at its height, but I didn't sell it. I knew about it, but I didn't want to sell. I wanted to sell the pots and pans and the cheap watches and double down and rehash. Once you put the $20 in my hand, all of a sudden I don't have no change and I'm on my way, right? You give me a 50, I don't have no change for that. So I just give you 2 pads, right? I double down, right? That was my hustle. And I took that hustle to Howard University looking for the Howard Players and only find out that it was an international world-renowned Howard band. And Vera Katz, who I just helped, she got a book called The Catwalk coming out, a Jewish woman. Let me audit her classes because I told her I wanted to be an actor. And she said, "Well, I don't have any money. I got just enough money to matriculate." My mom drove back, you know, on my homelessness, and my car got towed. They found out that I couldn't pay for my car. So I didn't even know what the word volition meant until they called me in my apartment I was staying with these young ladies, who I still keep in touch with, from Howard. Said, "Would you like to return your car upon your own volition?" I said, "Hold on, let me look that word up." And I was on a mission to become an actor. And in 1986, before that, I sought Howard University. I had seen the movie She's Gotta Have It. And the movie impressed me so, seeing these beautiful Black people on the screen in black and white, that I was like, I got to work with that man. Everyone thought I had lost my mind. The pushback I got, even my mama said, "Oh, he has cracked. He's going to be an actor and work with Spike Lee." Okay. Okay, Mickey. Whatever you say, baby. Everybody has a dream. And I do everything in 10-year intervals. The average person that commits to something that's only going to go for 5 in the business plan. If you can't stick with it in 10 years, then you're doomed. Everybody's going to give up in 5. It's like Call of Duty. Somebody's going to lose. Somebody's going to make a mistake. Somebody's going to give up. Someone's going to leave game. Put enough pressure on them, right? So I said by 1996, I would have my master's in theater and education because I had already had a degree from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Studied aerospace engineering while I was in the military, right? I was supposed to come out and come back and be Top Gun and fly F-16s for him, but I got the acting bug, right? And I said to myself in 1986, after I saw Spike selling socks in Washington, D.C., promoted this movie. I actually saw Spike Lee himself selling tube socks, right, to promote his movie.
Wow.
And now I'm doing what the Spike is doing. Same how I began in 86. Here in 2022, I'm damn near selling socks to get my movie finished. Corsicana into the theater, directly to the theater, but bypassing the distributor and taking it straight to the people, right? Which is unprecedented. Spike didn't do that. He went to Universal Pictures.
Right.
I'm not. I'm saying no. I believe the people's going to decide, right? And by 1996, by 1993, I was doing Crooklyn, but I would chase his little safari truck down in the neighborhood when I moved to Fort Greene, and it was hot, so he would leave his windows cracked. You know, everybody knew it was Spike. Was nobody gonna rob? Nobody gonna jack Spike. We love Spike, right? He was king. He was king of Fort Greene and Best Eye, right? Nobody gonna jack Spike, you know. At least not then. But
right.
I would take my photographs and slip them into his car every night.
Wow.
He never responded, but it wasn't until I did a movie called Strapped, where I played an undercover cop. I looked 23, but I was 33, I think, at the time, or in my 30s. I always looked younger, right? Crack did black for me, thank God. Didn't start cracking until now, right? And he saw me in Forrest Whitaker's film and didn't know who I was. Like, who is that actor? Because Spike wants to know who all the good actors are, right? And Robbie Reed, who was a powerful casting director who ended up becoming my manager for a little while, reached out to me, found out where I was, and had me audition for Crooklyn. And that's how it started.
Wow.
Man.
But I had already been stalking him years before.
Right.
So maybe he remembered the picture. Or someone said, oh, this is the guy that sent us like 50 photographs in the last year.
Whatever it was, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Let's take it full circle now, because now you're sitting here and you're not acting, or you are acting, but you're also in the producer and the writer and director's chair as well, with your new movie coming out soon, Corsicana. Am I saying that right? I'm sorry if I said
no,
that
that's
wrong.
correct. Yes,
Corsicana.
Shot in Corsicana, Texas, which is actually the history of where ExxonMobil got its first start. That's what interested me about that movie. I said yes 2 times. One, I didn't know who Bass Reeves was, and I wanted to portray him and get that out there. But also, being from Texas, I didn't know the importance of Corsicana. That was the first oil boom that happened west of the Mississippi, right? They were finding oil back in the 1800s and early 1880s. 90s in the East Coast and South, right? But not in Texas, right? And because of the incredible success of the oil boom in Corsicana, it became what we now know, ExxonMobil today.
Wow.
How about that?
That's insane. And just history that we didn't know that we get to learn. And this is why it's important to have these conversations and to have movies come out the way that they're coming out. And you decided to do this in the middle of a pandemic. 2020 hits, we get a pandemic, something we've never seen before. Talk about the motivation behind doing a movie. You've expressed it a little bit, but talk about like why it motivated you and why you got the fire to do this now.
I wasn't supposed to direct the movie.
Wow.
I was reached out by the original director like months before, like August, right before my birthday, and 2 years ago, right? I was just supposed to play Bass Reeves. I've done something I had never done before in the history of my career. I was so in love with Bass Reeves. I got on the plane and took like 50% of my little fee. I wasn't even about the money. I was in Corsicana, and while I was there, I fell in love with being home in Texas and dealing with playing with the kids, the refugees that were running from a hurricane out of Louisiana. I was there on the ground for 5 days, had even read the script, and even asked about it. And next thing I know, the director was being fired or quit 48 hours before we were supposed to start shooting.
Wow.
And the producers came to me and said, are you leaving too? Other producers left. Everybody left this investor. Left her hanging dry. She had been spending money for 4 months. Should have gave me money. I got a pay-or-play deal. I could go home, still get paid.
Wow.
And I looked around at the people that I got to know in those 5 days. One of the guys that lived there ended up I hired him. So now he's working in the special effects department. Right? His dad had a tumor, and I gave him a job. And some said yes. I had 48 hours to prepare. Who does that?
Yeah.
But I knew so much. I was so filled with the wanting the passion of telling the story of Bass Reeves that the ancestors just put me in the right place at the right time, and here we are, man.
Awesome.
I'm very proud of the movie. And I had enough film references over years from Spike and Clint Eastwood and Truffaut. So I was already probably prepared, ready to be a producer and director, but I never thought I was worthy. I thought it was something for them.
Mm-hmm.
And until I just said, you know what? I'm going to direct this. I saved the ship. Here we are.
Awesome. And when is the estimated date of release for the movie?
August 26th. We're taking it straight to my hometown at Star Cinema Grills. August 26th is the world premiere. No distributor, straight to the people. He has over 11 theaters. And we're going to start like Oscar Micheaux. Oscar Micheaux didn't get his deal with Astor Pictures because he was a black man working outside of racist 1920s Hollywood. Google Oscar Micheaux. I'm taking the path that's already been laid for me by Oscar Micheaux. I'm taking it straight to the theaters. The theaters are supportive. They're loving it. No middleman. The money comes straight back to our investors, goes straight back into her pocket, and ultimately everybody involved, our pockets. And it's something that we decide if the people are going to vote for it or not. But we're going to start off small. We're going to do shows like this and talk about Red the Mouth. If you want to help a true independent, you can't get no more independent than this.
Right. Can't wait.
We're taking it, but we took the weed and the crack straight to the people, didn't we?
Yes, sir.
It made a lot of money for a lot of people.
Still is.
Mm-hmm.
So I got content that I want to sell, but it ain't gonna kill nobody. Nobody's got to go to prison. It's not hurting my community. In fact, you're gonna be emboldened, educated, and inspired, hopefully.
Indeed.
And well, you know what I hope? I hope that people see me as Bass Reeves, and I know the power of movies, that all these young brothers drop all these gangs and say, you know what, let me educate myself and let me become a U.S. Marshal. And I could clean up my own neighborhood. I know who all the bad things are. You're not snitching. You're not part of your federal agent that's not corrupt and doing the right thing. Just like Spike's movie. That's all I want to do. That's what I learned from Spike. Hopefully people will watch Corsicana and get inspired like I got inspired with She's Gotta Have It, and just do the right thing.
Powerful. We got Isaiah Washington on the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast, legendary actor, producer, director of the new movie Corsicana, dropping late August, centered around the legendary man, Deputy U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves. Sir, we definitely appreciate
August 26th at the Star Cinema Grills in Houston, Texas, in Richmond, Texas, but all the theaters in my hometown in Missouri City. We're starting off small, but in a very big state, and we expect to expand and grow no different than Top Gun Maverick. Same deal.
Indeed. Hopefully we can get out there and check out the premiere. We definitely appreciate your time, Mr. Isaiah Washington.
Yes,
hopefully we can do this again because there's so many more questions and things that we can dive into.
Yes,
we definitely, sir, appreciate your time. It's been a true honor. Before we get up out of here, let the people know where they can find you. I know you've been kind of laying low on the social media thing, but anything you want the people to know before we get up out of here?
Yeah, I just posted the key art on my the real Isaiah Washington, verified on Instagram. Isaiah Washington, I'm verified on Facebook. So look for their little blue circle and white check there, or blue check. It's like some white check to me, but anyway, they call it the blue check. I don't really get down with Twitter that much. You know, I don't want the people on Twitter to know what I'm really doing. I've learned my lesson from Twitter, man. Ooh.
We're gonna bring up any tweets the first interview, maybe the second interview.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir, man. Isaiah Washington on the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. Definitely appreciate you, man. Great interview. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the support, guys. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Take care.
All right. Bye.